This is Cargill, the largest privately owned company in the United States, and one that some have called the worst company in the world. Many of the world's biggest food chains depend on this one corporation. From the potatoes in your fries to the meat in your burger, the buns, and even the cheese, Cargill supplies it all. At one point, this company even ran its own intelligence agency, which some compared to the CIA. In 2021, Cargill reported an astonishing revenue of $135 billion. The company is run by a secretive family, with 14 of its members ranked as billionaires, and yet most people have never even heard of it. And that's not a coincidence. Cargill goes out of its way to stay under the radar, because the less people know about them, the less they can be held accountable. But the actions this company has taken over the last 40 years are far too big to stay in the shadows. In today's video, we're uncovering the story of a company that holds influence over nearly every major food brand in the world. How did Cargill rise to such power, and what exactly did it do to earn such a notorious reputation? Stick around till the end to find out. If you're interested in stories the world rarely talks about, make sure to subscribe The Parallel Truth on YouTube so you never miss an update. We cover global events that matter, ones that often go unnoticed. Stay informed, stay ahead. To understand how Cargill got here, we need to go back 127 years. In 1865, a man named William Wallace Cargill built a grain storage warehouse in Iowa. Back then, slow transportation made it hard to move grain efficiently, so warehouses became incredibly valuable. At the same time, industrialization was picking up speed across the United States, and the National Railroad network was expanding rapidly. By 1875, railroads had linked the eastern and western coasts. Cargill saw the opportunity and began building warehouses at every important railway junction. In 1880, William Wallace Cargill arranged for his son to marry the daughter of John H. Macmillan, who owned another large warehouse chain. By 1890, the Cargill family had gained near total control over the grain storage business in the country. Then in 1924, they took things further by acquiring a company called Taylor & Bornick, which had its own private wire system, an early version of instant communication similar to the telegraph. Unlike regular mail, which could take days, this system allowed them to send messages almost instantly across long distances. Now that Cargill was active in the stock market, having fast access to information became essential. Owning their own wire system gave them a major advantage, a cutting-edge tool that worked much like the internet does today. With this system, Cargill started investing heavily in commodities. They could monitor developments in real time across different states and adjust their strategies almost immediately, leading to incredibly profitable outcomes. This edge helped them not just survive, but thrive during the Great Depression of the 1930s, a time when thousands of American businesses collapsed. Because of their private information network, Cargill saw the financial crisis coming before it hit. They began stockpiling massive amounts of grain, so when the grain shortages arrived, they sold off their reserves at double the usual price, making record profits. With the profits they had earned, Cargill began expanding far beyond grain storage. They started buying up farmland on a massive scale, purchasing thousands of acres from individual farmers. At the same time, they invested heavily in transportation, adding trains, trucks, and even cargo ships to their network, aiming to take control of the entire supply chain, from the farm all the way to the consumer. And over the years, they made it happen. By the 1970s, Cargill had gained control over much of America's poultry, dairy, grain, and transport industries. Once they had a firm hold on the US market, they turned their focus outward and began expanding globally. That was a turning point, the moment when Cargill's operations started impacting the lives of people across the world. Around this time, global demand for products like baby formula and chocolate began to rise. Chocolate, in particular, became a booming industry. Even today, the world consumes around 8 million tons of it every year. Chocolate is made from cocoa, which only grows in specific regions. About 70% of the world's cocoa comes from African countries like Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Cameroon, accounting for nearly 80% of the global chocolate supply. To tap into this growing market, Cargill started supplying cocoa to major brands like Nestlé, Mars, and Hershey's. They built cocoa processing plants in places like the Philippines and Taiwan, sourcing raw cocoa from nearby jungles and shipping it out to these global food giants. But as Cargill expanded, it ran into two major challenges. First, labour laws in the region were relatively strict. Second, natural disasters like storms made cocoa farming and transportation more expensive and unpredictable. To Cargill, there seemed to be one clear solution to both problems: a continent struggling with poverty, Africa. In the 1990s, Cargill discovered vast cocoa-growing regions in the Ivory Coast and made the decision to move its operations from the Philippines Philippines to Africa. But just a few years later, in 2000, a report surfaced that shocked the world. It revealed that during the 1990s, thousands of children under the age of 12 had been trafficked from Mali to the Ivory Coast and forced to work on cocoa plantations. These children were not paid, were poorly fed, and were denied even the most basic care. Some shared stories of being beaten with cocoa branches for small mistakes. Others had scars from knife wounds. All this suffering was tied to the production of cheap cocoa, the very same cocoa used in chocolates, made by major brands like Cadbury, Mars, and Hershey's. Widespread poverty and corruption allowed local governments to turn a blind eye to these abuses, often in exchange for small bribes. In 2005, the International Labour Rights Fund released a report claiming that these child labour camps were operating under the direct oversight of Cargill. After the report came out, a lawsuit was filed against the company, a case that's still making its way through local courts today. But despite the serious allegations, Cargill's operations barely slowed down. The company continued expanding across Africa. In 2019, it invested $113 million to build cocoa processing plants in the Ivory Coast and Ghana, while publicly stating its opposition to child labour. But many saw those statements as nothing more than a public relations move, because around the same time, Cargill was being linked to other disturbing activities across the world. As we've already seen, Cargill's core business is producing, storing, and distributing grains, dairy, and poultry. To keep those operations running and growing, they needed huge amounts of land, and it had to be cheap. To get that land, Cargill was accused of working with local gangs in multiple countries, using threats and violence to take control of properties. In 2011, in Indonesia, reports claimed that hired enforcers burned down an entire village on Cargill's orders. The reason? Someone from the village had been accused of stealing a single fruit from a company-owned orchard. After the fire, Cargill took over the land. A similar incident occurred in Brazil in 2013. Cargill was accused of sending a private militia to a village to drive out the residents. Witnesses said the militia broke into homes, assaulted women and children, and forced the entire village to flee in terror. Once again, the land ended up in Cargill's hands. In 2018, the company was sued for massive deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, mainly to make room for corn and soy farming. By 2020, reports estimated that Cargill had cleared around 800 square kilometers of forest. Today, that land is used to grow soy, much of which is used to feed nearly 60% of the world's poultry supply. Today, Cargill has grown into a global giant. Along with just 4 other companies, it controls 85% of the world's meat supply. Most major fast food chains get their ingredients directly from Cargill. But behind the tasty burgers, crispy chicken, and sweet chocolates, there are disturbing realities that often go unnoticed. Despite everything that's come to light, most people still have no idea who's really pulling the strings. In many of our countries, we proudly enjoy meals from big-name fast food brands. We assume that because these brands are international, the food must be safe and trustworthy. We eat it without thinking, without asking questions about where it comes from or how it's made. We follow without knowing. But knowledge is power, and my only goal is to help you stay informed about what's really happening in the world, because the right knowledge leads to the right actions. If you found this video helpful or eye-opening, don't forget to share it with others, and keep dropping your topic suggestions in the comments. We read them all. All the sources we used for this video are listed below. See you in the next video with another important story. Take care.